Taking our 10th spot is Harry's last words to the Queen. In the memoir, Harry discloses the final message he was able to utter to the former Queen prior to her passing. According to the Duke, he traveled to Balmoral as soon as he received word of the tragic news of the former Queen's withering state. However, Harry unfortunately didn't make it there on time before she died on September 8, 2022. According to information from the US publication Page 6, Harry whispered how he hoped Elizabeth would be happy and that she would be reunited with his grandfather, Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh, who passed away the year prior on April 9th. Reportedly, Harry also admitted to the late monarch that he, quote, admired her for having fulfilled her duties until the very end. This was in reference to her Platinum Jubilee attendance mere months before she passed, even though at the time she wasn't in the best health condition to partake in the festivities. Before we jump into number 9, like today's Where Are They Now video for more royal family updates. Taking our 9th spot is the royal evil stepmom. Well, not exactly, but this may as well be her brand with everything that has come out about her thus far. Another handful of secrets to be exposed by the prince regarding the royal family has to do with none other than the Queen Consort herself. Camilla's run-in with the pages of Harry's tell-all is a long and detailed tale, so let me break it down a little further for you. The first bombshell to drop was Harry's initial worries that Camilla would serve as his real-life evil stepmother. According to a UK publication by The Sun, Harry and his brother William were introduced to their father Charles's mistress turned wife following the of their mother, and Harry compared the meeting to an injection. In the book, Harry writes, "This is nothing. Close your eyes and you won't even feel it," further noting that Camilla seemed bored meeting him for the first time and described it as more of a pure formality since he was not the heir. Harry then referenced her as a wicked stepmom, penning, "I remember wondering if she would be cruel to me, if she would be like all the evil stepmothers in the stories." In other spillages, Harry also disclosed in the autobiography that he and William supposedly begged Charles not to wed Camilla. The prince claimed both he and his older brother informed their father that they were open to welcoming the now Queen Consort into their family under the sole condition that he did not marry her, further alluding to begging Charles not to do so. Harry stated that Charles never responded to their pleas. One more thing Harry shared about Camilla through Spare was that William was apparently tormented by Charles's affair with her. As per Page 6, which originally obtained a Spanish copy of Spare, the older royal sibling harbored tremendous guilt because of their father's relationship with the other woman. Harry wrote about how his brother allegedly had suspicions about the woman, now known as Camilla, for a very long time. Quote, "It confused him, tormented him, and when those suspicions were confirmed, he felt tremendous guilt for having done nothing, said nothing sooner." Taking our 8th spot is William and Kate's encouragement of Harry's inappropriate costume. Back in the early 2000s, Harry saw a lot of backlash regarding his infamous Central European authoritative uniform costume. According to the Duke, it was William and his wife Kate who motivated him to wear it in the first place, picking the controversial outfit over the phone. This would be the same uniform that landed Harry in several feet of hot water with the press in 2005. As for Page 6 again, when Harry cited this incident in writing, he claimed that William and Kate were overcome with laughter when they found out about the costume, featuring its signature band on Harry's left arm. Harry reportedly wrote, "I phoned Willie and Kate, asked what they thought. They both howled. Worse than Willie's leotard outfit, way more ridiculous," which again was the point. Taking our 7th spot is Harry's mommy tell-all. There were a few things listed about Diana in Harry's book as well, many of them shedding light on the woman she was and how she was treated and referred to by those around her. Two secrets in particular, which I'll be breaking down very shortly, have to do with Harry's life after her tragic passing. For one, Harry described his meeting with a woman claiming to have powers, who in turn informed him that Diana was there with him in spirit. Harry spoke about how the psychic was recommended to him by friends. The prince penned about their sit-down back in 2019, where he claimed to have felt an energy around the stranger. She would go on to tell Harry how his mother was with him, to which the Duke responded, "I know, I felt that of late." The psychic eventually specified that she meant his mother was there with him at the moment, which reportedly made him cry. Writing about his biggest takeaway from the psychic, Harry explained how she told him, "You're living the life she couldn't. You're living the life she wanted for you." Another eye-opening secret Harry dropped in his autobiography was the moment he learned about Diana's. In Spare, Harry revealed how Charles sat on the end of his Balmoral castle bed and told him, "My dear son, Mum has had a car accident." According to The Sun, Harry claimed his father was not affectionate to him at all, describing how he was not hugged and later felt like a politician while greeting members of the public in line with her heavily publicized passing. Taking our 6th spot is Harry's disclosure of his use of banned substances. I'm sure we all know back in the day, Harry had a pretty messy reputation for being a party guy, and in Spare, he even managed managed to greatly expose himself. The Duke wrote about how he dabbled in a specific illegal substance when he wasn't of age to feel different, saying how he took the banned substance during the summer of 2007 when he was only 17. Harry further explained how he occasionally took a few more down the road and over the years, noting how it wasn't an enjoyable experience for him and did not make him feel as happy as it appeared to make others. However, he did describe the fix as getting the job done, finalizing, "It did make me feel different and that was my main goal, to be different." Taking our 5th spot is Harry's claims of losing his V-card to a much older woman. The prince didn't really shy away from much in his tell-all, including his first romantic rendezvous with an older lady outside a pub. Harry went into details about the loss of his innocence while he was still in his teens, seeming to be when he just decided to risk it all for an older woman who loved macho horses. According to reports, Harry depicted how it all occurred, writing, "One of my many mistakes was letting it happen in a field, just behind a very busy pub. No doubt someone had seen us." Taking our 4th spot is the infamous flower girl dress fight. According to claims made by Harry in Spare, his wife and Duchess Meghan and his sis-in-law Kate did indeed get into their widely speculated spat regarding flower girl dresses. Therefore, the rumored fight between Meghan and Kate's wedding wasn't actually just that apparently. From a Daily Mail source, a single message is relayed stating, "In the book, Harry says there was a discussion about the timing of the wedding rehearsal and the flower girl dresses, and Kate was very upset. Meghan said that Kate must have baby brain because of her hormones. It caused a huge row because Meghan was told that she wasn't close enough to her sister-in-law to discuss her hormones, and it wasn't the way people spoke to each other within the royal family." Yet another source, this time from page 6, informed the publisher that the argument conjured itself up due to Kate wanting Charlotte's flower girl dress to be altered. Taking our 3rd spot is William's alleged physical attack. Yes, we know these brothers regularly beef, just as many of the rest of us with siblings do. However, in accordance with a The Guardian published piece, theirs was much more serious. Prince Harry revealed how William allegedly harmed him in his own home at Kensington Palace back in 2019, after William referred to Meghan as difficult, rude, and abrasive. Harry penned how William grabbed me by the collar, ripping my necklace, and knocked me to the floor. The end result was supposed visible bruises and cuts on his back, something that Meghan would later discover, according to the prince. Harry described William leaving Nottingham Cottage and later returning looking regretful to apologize. Before he left the home once more, Harry said William told him not to inform his wife of the incident. Harry responded with, "You mean that you attacked me?" which prompted William to fire back with, "I didn't attack you, Harold." Harry wrote how he disclosed the occurrence to his therapist first, but Meghan eventually found out and wasn't that surprised and wasn't all that angry. She was terribly sad. Taking our 2nd spot is Harry reportedly wiping out 25 people while serving in an Afghanistan tour. Harry claimed he took the lives of almost 30 people while he served as a helicopter pilot. From a section of The Telegraph report, Harry took down 25 fighters on his second duty tour in the country. Harry recalled in the book how he didn't consider the people whose lives he took as that, but more so as, quote, chess pieces he removed from the board, adding how it did not satisfy him, but it also did not embarrass him. Taking our 1st spot is King Charles begging for his sons to reconcile. The Duke claimed, on top of everything listed prior, that Charles pleaded for him and William to make amends. An additional article stated that one mere month following Harry and Meghan's Oprah interview, the king wanted nothing more than for his sons to make up during the April 2021 funeral for Prince Philip. The memoir detailed how Charles reportedly stood in between his sons, glancing at their flushed faces as Harry described. The prince quoted his father reportedly saying, "Please boys, don't make my final years a misery." Taking our 10th spot is Queen Consort Camilla Parker Bowles. Between Camilla recently trending again for arguably hating black people and the unwavering target on her back for reportedly stealing another royal's man once upon a time, it seems Camilla just can't catch a break in the media. The tragic love triangle between her, Charles, and former Princess of Wales Diana was once an absolute spectacle for the world to watch. Before the situation got publicly messy, Charles and Diana married at London's St. Paul Cathedral in July 1981. Fans constantly marveled at the royal duo, but while spectators were utterly enamored by Diana's iconic David Emmanuel royal wedding gown, a lot of them were unaware of Charles's attraction to another woman, Camilla, years prior as he stood in the church. The infatuation between the latter two was something of an unspoken secret within the royal family, and only a mere few years following Charles and Diana's tying the knot, the then prince initiated an under-the-table affair with Camilla. Camilla. Diana was devastated by this and eventually flung herself into a bunch of one-offs, the most popular being her time with the famous horse trainer James Hewitt. Years of beating around the bush with heavily criticized tabloid articles and press leaks resulted in Diana and Charles' separation announcement in 1992. Diana iconically stated, "There were 3 of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded." Most recently, Camilla's questionable interaction with a young black toddler has social media users respeculating past royal moments. The Queen Consort paid a visit to the Barnardo's nursery preschool to hand out numerous Paddington Bear stuffies that were left in tribute for Elizabeth II's death. During a moment with the little girl, Camilla lifted her arm by her sleeve, and while some alluded to Camilla attempting to view the child's bracelet she previously commented on, others criticized the action by labeling her racist, because she seemed inclined to touch the young girl. In the aftermath, 3 additional clips of other royal family members reportedly exhibiting racist behavior went viral on Twitter, with over 150,000 views, sparking another online race debate as the royals currently face increasing backlash over prejudice allegations made in recent years. Additionally, this wouldn't be the first time Camilla has been called out over this topic either. In 2021, the Duchess of Sussex Meghan Markle talked about the racism she personally experienced from the British media during her Oprah Winfrey landmark interview. While discussing the subject with the TV hostess, Meghan also disclosed the issue of an unnamed royal who made racially insensitive comments regarding the then potential skin color of her and Harry's children, an incident Harry later recalled in the sit-down. The subject of the allegations led many to believe Camilla was the guilty party behind the comment, since the royals have all seen growing scrutiny over their interactions with black people, like Kate Middleton and William, who saw a bigger wave of criticism in March once they were photographed shaking the Caribbean public's hands through a chain-link fence, or Charles, who recently dealt with a similar PR storm after video footage reportedly showed him neglecting to shake a black crowd member's hand during the viewing wait for Elizabeth's lying in state. Like today's Where Are They Now if you've been keeping up with the royals. Taking our 9th spot is the late King Henry VIII, who, according to reports, created the Church of England in order to obtain multiple wives. Allegedly, once Henry grew bored of his marriage to the former Queen Consort, Catherine, he attempted to worm his way out, but divorce was strictly forbidden by the Pope, so Henry formulated a creative way to annul his marriage. In what could arguably be considered Henry being way before his time, the late monarch created his own church in 1534, known since as the Church of England as aforementioned. Reportedly, this freed Henry from the dead weight of his unhappy marriage, and he later went on to wed 5 different wives. 2 of his former wives, Catherine and Anne, were beheaded at his discretion along the way. Not exactly the most charming thing to do to your wife, honestly. Taking our 8th spot is the late Princess Diana. One of Diana's many messes came from the term Squidgygate, which referenced a scorching release from The Sun, the notorious royal scandal publishing company that exposed a private recording of a 1989 photo exchange between the late Princess of Wales and who was known to be her friend James Gilby. In it, James reportedly endearingly referred to Diana as Squidgy throughout the length of topics they got into, including the way Elizabeth viewed her in the royal family then and Diana becoming pregnant. Naturally, Diana flat out denied the claims of her being romantically involved with James, stating, "He is a very affectionate person," but the implications of that conversation were that we had an adulterous relationship, which was not true. Still, the severe damage of yet another royal entanglement was already long said and done. Taking our 7th spot is Sarah Ferguson and her quote, "cash for access scandal." Known best as Fergie, Sarah is still reportedly one of the royal family's most provocative members. As Andrew's ex-wife, the Duchess of York has involved herself in a multitude of royal scandals ever since the crumble of their marriage, which quickly spiraled into divorce in May 1996. Sarah landed herself in a very sticky 2010 situation when the news of the world caught her agreeing to give access to Britain's then special trade representative and her royal ex-husband in exchange for £500,000. An undercover reporter by the name of Mazir Mahmood played a fake businessman in order to record his entire conversation with Sarah, where she was reportedly heard to say, "Look after me and he'll look after you. I can open any door you want." Later on, Sarah profusely apologized for the incident and even admitted that her financial situation was stressful. She also revealed that this admission did not excuse her serious lapse of judgment. Taking our 6th spot is Princess Michael. Married to the Prince of Kent, Michael, and being the first cousin of Queen Elizabeth II, Princess Michael was detailed to have worn a racist brooch during a royal lunch with Meghan Markle in attendance. Michael took the world by surprise when she showed up at the 2017 Buckingham Palace Christmas luncheon, donning a dark African royal brooch. An article article which carries offensive ties for African people in regards to exoticization. The accessory choice was credited as tone deaf given the fact that Meghan, who was also there as mentioned prior, had been extremely vocal about her difficulties growing up as a mixed female. In the end, the princess's spokesperson issued an apology statement, noting any offense that had probably been caused to the Duchess of Sussex with, "The brooch was a gift and had been worn many times before. Princess Michael is very sorry and distressed that it has caused offense." Taking our 5th spot is Queen Victoria. Victoria has been reported to have many controversial relationships over the time span of her former life, mainly because of her and the Indian royal attendant Abdul Karim, a pair who developed a rather strong relationship that turned the heads of many. As broken down in the 2007 Victoria and Abdul movie, Victoria gradually promoted Karim in her inner circle to a high-ranking position, and even though many rumors alluded to their relationship, their bond was noted to be strictly platonic. However, when the Queen passed in 1901, her family didn't show Karim the same kind of support, as they quickly deported the Indian-born servant back to his native country. Even though Abdul's honor to the once monarch through their close connection was short-lived, he wasn't her only unexpected companion. In light of the death of Victoria's beloved husband Albert, the late Queen placed her trust in a Scottish servant known as John Brown. The relationship was heavily subjected as a topic of discussion in a British court, with many speculating Victoria had even secretly married John. Taking our 4th spot is Edward VIII, who once chose to renounce the throne for love. Sound familiar? Well, in 1936, the UK's monarch announced his decision to wed the former twice-divorced American socialite Wallis Simpson. In his decision, Edward faced immediate backlash from the Church of England as their head and the government. In a shocking twist, Edward gave up the throne to his younger brother King George VI, and this still remains as one of the biggest royal scandals in existence. His Baltimore-born lover faced extreme character assassination from the public during her time, as the press brutally classed her as that woman, while claiming she planned on seducing Edward to stray him away from his royal duties. However, despite the controversy, the two married in 1937. To make things messier though, there were allegations that Wallis was born intersex. Royal writer Anne Seba penned a biography which alluded the quote, "becoming Duchess of Windsor had a raspy voice, square jaw, and a flat chest," while multiple other sources claimed Wallis never menstruated and was infertile. This didn't stop the couple from lavishly exiling themselves in a luxurious cottage named La Moulin de la Tuileries on the outskirts of Paris, and later living in the Bahamas, where Edward took place as governor for 5 years in 1940. Taking our 3rd spot is Princess Margaret. The ill-fated romance between Margaret and Peter Townsend made such a spectacle that their tragic love story was crafted into a TV show plotted around their messy journey in the kingdom. Royal family enthusiasts nowadays may be too young to remember Margaret in her prime. However, the first season of the near-finalized series, The Crown, makes it easy for viewers to imagine what it could have been. As the tale goes, Queen Elizabeth II's lively younger sister ended up falling in love with Peter, a divorced royal attendant 16 years her senior. 3 years of tireless debating with her monarch sister and the UK government, the princess was soon ultimately forbidden from marrying the group captain unless she turned over her royal privileges. In the end, Margaret chose to keep her title and royal duties triumphed. Margaret declared a decision to not wed Peter in a since-famous 1955 Buckingham Palace statement, whereas Peter was sent away on a Belgium assignment to place distance between himself and Margaret. Taking our 2nd spot is Prince Harry. In what was classed as the most avoidable royal scandal in history, we have the second son of Diana and Charles, who showed up to a 2005 costume party dressed as a German authoritative officer. The red-headed royal even wore a German authoritative symboled armband, and somewhat unsurprisingly, photos of him dressed in full SS gear took center stage on the Sun's front covers. But this wasn't the end of his controversies at that point. Words pieced together like billiards and strip were quite uncommon until Harry was photographed playing the game nude in a Las Vegas hotel room. Once again, the Sun published another enlarged image of Harry covering his groin and headlined it, "Here it is." Taking our first spot is Princess Anne. In 2002, late Queen Elizabeth's only daughter Anne and her ex Prince Philip were subjected to a €500 fine with an additional €500 compensation to pay for the trauma of two families' children who were attacked by her English Bull Terrier Dottie. Despite the 7 and 12-year-old boys not sustaining any major injuries, the brutal incident still dubbed the Princess Royal as the first senior member of the royal family to be convicted of a criminal offense. Now that is a wild scandal.
And you can't look down to read the speech, you have to take the speech up. Because if you did, your neck would break, or it'd fall off.
Yesterday on September 8th, 2022, it was announced that Queen Elizabeth II had passed away at the age of 96. She was the longest reigning monarch and she sat on the throne for 70 years. She was and remains a beloved figure in Britain, but with her passing, people have been looking at her life, her legacy, as well as that of her successor, and with the in-depth looks into the past, some secrets start to be revealed. Welcome back to Where Are They Now? I'm your host today, Olivia Kozlowski, and today we are going to be diving into the life of the Queen, as well as discussing some of the royal family secrets that are bubbling back up to the surface. Before we dive in though, guys, please hit that like button if you enjoy this video, it really does help us out. With that, let's dive right in. Queen Elizabeth II's life took a wild turn quite early on. When she was born, she was never meant to be the queen, but that all changed when her uncle, King Edward VIII, abdicated the crown because he wanted to marry outside of what his role would allow him. This meant that King George VI, Queen Elizabeth's father, was left as his successor. Queen Elizabeth was just 10 years old at this point, and her life was never going to be the same. Queen Elizabeth certainly never expected to take the throne at such a young age. In fact, it is said that she wasn't even aware of her father's declining health. When King George VI passed away in his sleep on February 5th, 1952, Queen Elizabeth and her husband, Prince Philip, were on a royal tour. This tour had them in the Treetops Hotel in Kenya when the news broke, which meant that Queen Elizabeth was one of the last people to know. This left Queen Elizabeth on the throne earlier than she had ever expected, which is an incredibly difficult task to live up to. No one has ever said that being a queen was an easy job. The Queen went on to have 4 children, and while 3 of them, Princess Anne, Prince Edward, and Prince Andrew, have all spoken highly of their mother, it ironically was the now King Charles III who, in his 1994 biography, lamented that it was essentially the nursery staff who taught him how to play, who witnessed his milestone moments, and who he feels sort of raised him. Aside from these difficult truths, it is also said that the Queen felt quite a bit of guilt over being called to serve her country, which meant that she wasn't able to be as active in raising her children as she would have been should she have not been the Queen. This goes hand in hand with tales of how frugal the Queen was. Apparently, while being worth millions, she's also said to have been on quite the cheap streak. There were even rumors that she refused to allocate any money toward kitchen supplies, which meant that the royal cooks were using pots and pans from the 1800s that still had Queen Victoria's stamp on them. While she was tight with her own budget, she is said to have indulged plenty in her children, perhaps as a way to mitigate her guilt over what we just discussed. A former cleric even said to the Telegraph that, quote, in her own financial matters, she was tight, but she's been very extravagant with her children. She's indulged them terribly. She allowed Andrew and Sarah to build that house in Ascot when there were perfectly good homes available elsewhere. So far as I could see, they couldn't have cared less about the budget, but the Queen didn't come down on them. She just paid up, and that was very wrong. On that count, she's guilty in spades. When we look more into the Queen and her relationships, this is when the real dark secrets begin to come out. Earlier on in this video, I mentioned Queen Elizabeth's uncle, the one who abdicated the throne, which effectively put her in line when she was never meant to be. This uncle, King Edward VIII, abandoned the throne because he wanted to marry Wallis Simpson. Wallis is an American socialite who had been divorced twice, and as king, Edward was forbade from marrying somebody who had been divorced. There was public and political outrage, and it left him stepping away from this role. This is already bad enough from the standpoint of the royal family, but imagine the standpoint they and the rest of the world had when Edward and Wallis were accused of being sympathizers. Wallis is said to have had a love affair with a member of that hateful group before even meeting Edward, and for Edward he is said to have been very proud of his German heritage. There is certainly nothing wrong with being proud of your heritage, but when it causes you and your wife to take a trip to visit and hang out with Hitler, things become a little dicey. In fact, it is said that Adolf desperately wanted Edward back on the throne so that he could act as a sort of puppet for him. Wallis was also accused at one point of sharing British intelligence with Germany, which obviously is a huge no-no for many reasons. The 90s were certainly a rough era for the royal family. There was the divorce of Princess Anne from her husband after he had a child outside of their marriage. There was Prince Andrew, who divorced Duchess Sarah Ferguson after the whole very strange toe-sucking scandal. Not here to kink shame anyone, it's just not the kind of thing you want to know about the royal family. And then of course we have Prince Charles and Princess Diana's crumbling marriage due to the infidelity, and Princess Diana's Diana's death. There have been many a rumor that suggests that the royal family had quite the hand in the death of Princess Diana, and while those could certainly and hopefully are just rumors, no one can deny the strange and cold behavior that was observed after her death. After Diana's death, the flags weren't even lowered to half-mast until there was public outcry about it. Some believe that had there been no backlash, they might not have been lowered at all. Before Diana's passing, King Charles had long been having an extramarital affair, and it is said that everyone, including the Queen, knew, and some blamed her for not intervening and putting a stop to it, because if anyone could, it would have been her. It's also worth noting that while of course the monarchy is all about family ties, the proper royal chain was shattered long before Queen Elizabeth's uncle abdicated. Back in 2012, 10 years ago, the remains of King Richard III were discovered. This was 500 years after his death, and they were able to do some DNA testing. This testing confirmed that they could not link the remains to any paternal relatives. This means that at some point down the line, someone was having an affair and a quote-unquote illegitimate heir was placed in power. This basically suggests that those in power now are only in that position because of a past, well-hidden secret. While many people in Britain are grieving the loss of their queen, and those sympathies can certainly be felt worldwide, there are also people who are grieving for very different reasons. For others, the death of the queen revived these sort of memories and wounds of the region's colonial past, and it reminded people of the monarchy's role in the slave trade. It's not necessarily the queen that people didn't like, although that does exist too, but it's more about the monarchy and what it stands for and the dark histories and the roles that the royal family has played in historic atrocities. Queen Elizabeth I played a key role in the development of the Atlantic slave trade. Queen Victoria's rule saw the engineering of the potato famine that killed 1 million Irish people. Charles II and those around him actively condoned and encouraged not only the harassment and displacement, but also the massacre of Indigenous Americans. This is just a drop in the bucket of an extremely troubled past. One of the major points that people who don't support the Queen had was how her banking empire supports the continued pillaging of Africa, which comes to a total of about $41 billion a year through secrecy jurisdictions. I'm not saying that anyone is perfect, but I am saying that there are plenty of people out there who have a right and a pretty good reason to not want to support the monarchy or the Queen. People are certainly worried for the future of the monarchy, and I can understand why. When Queen Elizabeth II came into her role, the UK held more than 70 overseas territories as part of the empire, but now that number has dwindled to just 14. The monarchy held a lot more power in the beginning of her reign than it does now, and it is no secret that the Queen was looked on a lot more favorably than the new king. King Charles has had his fair share of scandals, and in our technological world full of news that can travel fast, these scandals might only cause there to be less support for the monarchy. It is possible that the tides will change, but only time will tell. At the end of the day, Queen Elizabeth II had a long reign. She was adored by many, and I know those who loved her are mourning.
Coming in at number 10, fits the mold. Alright, so I think most of us were expecting to hear about some of the ingrained biases that members of the royal family grow to have. In the first episode of the series, Prince Harry revealed that there is a temptation in royal family to marry someone who, quote, fits the mold. And I think most of us are aware of this kind of mentality for the royal family, and honestly, on a more laid-back scale, this is prevalent in most families in the world. There is an expectation to find a significant other who meets a standard that the rest of your family probably instilled in you. The only thing is that, for the royal family, breaking that mold is 1, very easy to do, and 2, comes with harsh backlash. Prince Harry said, quote, I think for many people in the family, especially the men, there can be a temptation or an urge to marry someone who would fit the mold rather than someone you are perhaps destined to be with. And in my opinion, while most of us would agree that there is absolutely nothing actually wrong with Meghan, she is successful, beautiful, respectful, and seems like an incredibly lovely person, most of that has been undercut by the color of her skin, her choice of profession, and the country she comes from. It's just the truth. Prince Harry added to finish this point that, quote, the difference between making decisions with your head or your heart, and my mum certainly made most of her decisions from her heart. I am my mother's son. And coming in at number 9, learning from the past. Talking about his parents, in episode 2 of the series, Harry revealed that both he and Meghan, who were both children of divorce, didn't want to make the same mistakes as their parents, which is something a lot of children of divorce and messy marriages can relate to. Harry said, quote, what's most important for the two of us is to make sure that we don't repeat the same mistakes that perhaps our parents made. I think most kids who are the product of divorced parents have a lot in common, no matter what your background is. Being pulled from one place to another, or maybe your parents are competitive, or you're in one place longer than you want to be in. You're in another place less than you want to be. There's all sorts of pieces to that. And he is definitely not wrong. As an example, my parents are split up, and I find it a bit harder to relate to people whose parents have stayed together. You also observe your parents, and over time you can understand and learn the ways they failed their marriages, and sometimes the ways they did some things right. The fear of following in those negative footsteps is a huge relatable factor that I think probably makes Harry and Meghan's relationship stronger than some others in the family who are afraid to lean into their feelings like that. Number 8. Unconscious bias. Okay, we've been pretty heavy on this list so far, but it's important because this whole thing is basically love versus duty versus hundreds of years of both conscious and unconscious biases. And the Duke spoke on this quite a bit. He said, quote, "In this family, sometimes you're part of the problem rather than part of the solution, and there is a huge level of unconscious bias. The thing with unconscious bias is that it's actually no one's fault, but once it's been pointed out or identified within yourself, you then need to make it right." Now, a lot of us who have already learned better or just knew better from the start will jump straight to a point of anger about the biases that are so prevalent in the royal family, but there is also a level of these people are incredibly sheltered and closed off. The royals are kind of in a world of their own. It's not really okay, and it's a little archaic, but it is the truth. Harry goes on to say, quote, "It's education, it's awareness, and it's a constant work in progress for everyone, including me." He then went on to talk about his past controversy when he dressed up as a member of the World War II National Socialist German Workers' Party. Now you know who I'm talking about when I say that, right? Because YouTube won't actually let me say their usual name. Just want to make that clear. We know who we're talking about. Harry dressed up like this at a costume-themed party back in 2005, and he said it's, quote, "one of the biggest mistakes of my life." He added that, quote, "I felt so ashamed afterwards." And then he explained how he met with survivors and rabbis in order to educate himself on his wrongdoings. Now that's just an example of how the royal family can be out of touch with reality just a little bit. Number 7. Spies in the backyard. During the second episode of the series, Meghan revealed that paparazzi actually paid her neighbors in Toronto to spy on her. Meghan revealed that when the news broke of her relationship with Harry back in 2016, her neighbors in Toronto were paid by members of the press to plant a camera in her backyard. She said, quote, "It felt like all of the UK media descended upon Toronto. My house was just surrounded, just men sitting in their cars all the time, waiting for me to do anything." See, Meghan, being a celebrity already, has dealt with the press before, but the press surrounding the royal family, they're on a whole different level. And I'm sure the ridiculous controversy of the situation just brought it all to another level on top of that. She continued on saying, quote, "My neighbors texted me saying they're knocking on everyone's door, they're trying to find you. They had paid certain neighbors to put a live stream camera into my backyard. Suddenly, it was like everything about my life was getting so much more insular. All the curtains were pulled, all the blinds were pulled. It was scary." And that element of fear plays perfectly into this next point. Number 6. Protection? But why? A little bit later in the second episode, Prince Harry claimed that members of the royal family asked why Meghan should get special treatment and be protected when the two of them had issue with the actions of the British press, descending on her home, neighbors, and privacy. But not only that, the headlines being pumped out about the couple and Meghan specifically were not just vicious, but were also pretty damn racist. The couple referenced a Daily Mail newspaper headline from 2016 that said, and I quote here, "Harry's girl is almost, in brackets, straight out of Compton," which I could go on a 13-minute rant about that on its own. Harry said that when they brought their concerns to the family, quote, "the direction from the palace was don't say anything." He added, quote, "But what people need to understand is, as far as a lot of the family were concerned, everything that she was being put through, they had been put through as well. So it was almost like a rite of passage." He said that some of the members of the royal family were like, quote, "My wife had to go through that, so why should your girlfriend be treated any differently? Why should you get special treatment? Why should she be protected?" And as Harry correctly responded to that, quote, "The difference here is the race element. Something pretty much all the other members of the royal family cannot relate to." Number 5. Formality. Stepping away from that issue for a moment, also in episode 2, the Duchess talked about her first meeting with Harry's brother, Prince William, and his wife, Kate. Meghan revealed that the formality that we see presented to the public every day by the royal family is not just an outward show, but it even carries over behind closed doors as well, which is another example of the reality of royal life. Speaking about her meeting with Kate, Meghan said, quote, "I met her for the first time, they came over for dinner, and I remember I was in ripped jeans and I was barefoot. I was a hugger, I've always been a hugger, but I didn't realize that this is really jarring for a lot of Brits." Now, I should say, I am actually British. I was born there and I came here at a young age. All of my family is British, but hugging is not jarring for us. Like, I want to be clear, British people like a hug as much as the next person. I love hugs. What I will admit here is that there is some kind of ingrained awkwardness, and especially when dealing with the formality of a royal. A hug is probably incredibly out of place for most of them. This segment continued on with footage of Kate and William walking alongside each other with Meghan's voice saying, quote, "I started to understand very quickly that the formality on the outside carried through on the inside." Now, I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but for someone on the outside not accustomed to the royal life, putting on this display of royalty for the cameras and the people can probably be very exhausting. And then learning that for the rest of the family, it isn't really a display at all. That would probably be a bit disarming. Number 4. Actor. But going back to the issues that the family had with Meghan, still in episode 2, Harry explained that Meghan's career as an actress skewed the judgment of his family, meaning her choice of profession made most of his family believe that the relationship wouldn't last that long. He said, quote, "I remember my family first meeting her and being incredibly impressed. Some of them didn't quite know what to do with themselves, but then the Duke jokingly added, I think they were surprised, maybe surprised that a ginger could land such a beautiful, intelligent woman." Then he jumped back to the reality of the situation, saying, quote, "The fact that I was dating an American actress was probably what clouded their judgment more than anything else at the beginning. Oh, she's an actress, this won't last." Number 3. Rehearsed. Now this next part is something I just assumed happened, but right at the start of episode 3, Meghan spoke about the BBC engagement interview that the couple did, and she said it was a, quote, "orchestrated reality show." She explained how the interview itself was pretty much pre-planned. She said, quote, "It was rehearsed, we did the thing out with the press, then we went right inside, took the coat off, and did the interview." So it's all in that same moment. When she was asked if the couple were prepped on how the interview would play out, she continued, "Yeah, but also like, then there'll be a moment when they'll want to see the ring, so show the ring. We weren't allowed to tell our story because they didn't want it," she added. Which is the interesting part, honestly. I think a rehearsed interview could be expected at the very least. Like, if I married a royal, I would just know that that kind of thing comes with the territory. But to have to leave out the things you do want to talk about does feel wrong. That's where you can see the narrative control that was in place. Number 2. Tabloid Attack. Now, another side to that narrative control comes into play when we talk about negative press. Controlling what the family says is one thing, and that part is relatively understandable when dealing with what is essentially a business that thrives off public opinion. But that also comes with being able to control the news. And in the 3rd episode, the Duchess claimed that salacious stories were planted in the press in the lead up to her wedding to Harry in 2018. And it's very true that during that time, every tabloid you saw had some wild claim about Meghan and Harry. She said that, quote, "We were playing whack-a-mole every day. Every day it was like, wait, another one popped up? Wait, stop, another story. Constant." In the episode, they showed headlines like, quote, "related to serial killer," along with references to a X and Meghan went on saying, quote, "They were going through the woodwork and pulling people out to create and plant the most salacious stories that they could." I think she is talking about the press themselves, but the planting of stories part is pretty clearly talking about a play from the palace itself. And in at number 1 is a secret list. To close out this list on a more cute note, I didn't want to be so negative the whole time, Harry and Meghan, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, had a little reminiscing about early on in their relationship during episode 1 of the series, and they talked about how Harry had this not so little, quote, "extensive list of things that he would be looking for in a girlfriend, and I guess eventual wife." Meghan seemed to think that this was adorable, but I mean, she passed the test, so of course she would think that. In the episode, she jokingly and kind of adorably said how, quote, "he had a list apparently of what he was looking for, an extensive list," with Harry jumping on to add, "I'm not showing you the list." It was kinda cute, I'm not gonna lie. But that's all the time I've got for today. I'm Adam Andrews with Where Are They Now? Connect with us down below, and I'll see y'all on the flippy flop. I'm out!